welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today we're going to be doing another Loadouts Done quick video. This time we're going to be taking a look at Driller's second primary weapon, the CryoCannon. Because I realized that I haven't been talking about Driller a whole lot with these videos recently. We only have 4 of these videos up right now for Driller, and 2 of them currently are on the Sabata, once before it got reworked and once afterward. So let's talk about the CryoCannon. Which the CryoCannon is a fantastic weapon that has a lot of utility and can be very strong for the team as well as the Driller themselves, because freezing any enemy makes it so the enemy can't fight back, and you can deal a lot of damage with it, specifically melee damage, which Driller is kind of the melee class too. Drills do melee damage, throwing axes do melee damage, which is pretty cool. So let's go over each of its overclocks, a build that I usually take with it, and a secondary that I would recommend with it. This isn't going to go super in-depth, it's just going to be a rough overview of the overclock. The other ones are saved for different videos. So first up we have Snowball as our first overclock, which was an overclock that was recently changed. So now Snowball actually has better ammo efficiency than it did before, as well as it has a cold lingering effect, which it didn't have before. What Snowball does is let you fire out a snowball from the CryoCannon. In order to do this, you have to hit your reload button. This will charge it up, take a second, and then fire the snowball out. Once the snowball hits an enemy or hits a surface, it will then explode, and it freezes all enemies, or at least can freeze all enemies, depending on which type of enemy it is. It can build up their cold meter really fast, and then it has a lingering cold in the area where the snowball went off, so it will continue to freeze enemies for the next 6 seconds. This does cost 25 ammo in order for you to shoot the snowball, as well as this does overheat your CryoCannon, so you do have to wait for it to come back up. That's not such a huge deal because you've likely taken care of all the problems, or at least slowed down the majority of the problems that are attacking you, which can be very useful. This is also really strong on a Mactera Plague mission, where you can just one-shot an entire crowd of them, which is really awesome. The way I like to build the Snowball CryoCannon is like this. So in Tier 1, I'm taking the faster cooling. Honestly, any of them in Tier 1 are pretty good. I like the faster cooling because a lot of the time I'm not using this just for the Snowball. I'm usually just using the regular CryoCannon, and I'm just saving that for big crowds of enemies. In Tier 2, I'm going with extra ammo. This is just so if I want to use the Snowball more often, I can use it more often. And Snowball does take away from our maximum ammo, so just getting that back does help. In Tier 3, I'm taking the faster rate of fire. That way we can freeze things a little bit faster and get a little bit more DPS out of the CryoCannon. Both of them are good in Tier 3, though. Pick whichever one you'd like. Tier 4, once again, more ammo. That way we can just use Snowball more often. And we have more than what our base ammo is with the CryoCannon, which is super useful. And then in Tier 5, Cold Radiance, because Cold Radiance is just probably the most overpowered skill in the entire game, or just one of the strongest skills in the game. What this does is it applies cold to everything around you within 5 meters as you're firing the CryoCannon, so you don't have to be firing it directly at them, they just need to be near you. For a secondary weapon, I decided to pair this with the Fusion Ray. This is a balanced overclock for the microwave gun, and I just built the microwave gun as a thermal shock build, and my main goal with this is freeze as many enemies as possible with the CryoCannon, and then just drag the microwave gun across them, dealing damage to all of them, and likely temp shocking them. It's a very fun and very ammo efficient build, so if you ever wanted to have the most amount of ammo, this one's a really good one. Moving on to our second overclock with the CryoCannon, we have Ice Spear. Ice Spear is a balanced overclock that is very similar to Snowball, where you can activate it, and once you do this, it charges up your CryoCannon and fires out an Ice Spear. This does really, really high damage on hit, and the only downside to this is that it does overheat your CryoCannon, and it takes a little bit longer to come back up. Other than that, there's no changes to the base CryoCannon, and this one can be insanely strong for single target damage. You can actually one-shot menaces on any difficulty if you hit them in the weak spot with this. You can one-shot Trijaws. Pretty sure it can one-shot Wardens as well if you hit them in the weak spot too. For this, we're going to be running the exact same build that we just ran on the Snowball, basically for the same reasons, because we want to keep using ammo. Tier 1, pick whichever one you'd like. I like going with the Freeze, but any of them are fine. Tier 2 and Tier 4, I like going with ammo just so we can use Ice Spear more often. Ice Spear does cost a decent amount, costing 50 ammo every time we use it, so you want to be using it kind of sparingly, but it's fantastic for taking out long-range, big targets that usually Driller has trouble dealing with. Tier 3, your choice, pick whichever one you like. I like going with the faster freezing, and then in Tier 5, we once again go into the Cold Radiance, giving us even more crowd control. This one actually pairs really well with anything. You do have to be a little bit careful about firing this because you don't want to be wasting these Ice Spear shots, so make sure that they count anytime that you fire them. For a secondary, we are once again going to be taking the microwave gun. However, this time we're not going to be taking it with a thermal shock build, we're just going to be taking it with a strong build for the microwave gun, and we're going to be using Blistering Necrosis, which is an insanely strong combo with Ice Spear if you can get everything to line up. Blistering Necrosis allows you to put blisters onto enemies. This makes it so they take more damage once those blisters pop. If you put a blister on an enemy and fire an Ice Spear into it, you can one-shot just about anything in the game. You can actually one-shot the twins if you would like with this. Not both of them at the same time, but one of them you can one-shot from full HP. It's really strong. It is very difficult to do that, and there's not going to be a whole lot of circumstances where you get to do that, but if you can do it, it's definitely worth it. It's a really cool highlight to have. For our third build, we're going to be using Ice Storm as our primary overclock on the CryoCannon. Ice Storm is a really fun overclock that I really enjoy. It nerfs our overall ammo as well as it nerfs our freezing power, and it also makes it so our pressure drop rate is worse so we can overheat quicker. But this does double your damage with the CryoCannon, and it doubles it once again once enemies are frozen. So that can already be pretty strong. It's even stronger with our tier 5 Cold Radiance because I don't think Cold Radiance is affected by your freezing power at all. You can just freeze enemies around you. So long as you get up real close with this, you can kill things really fast. The way I like to build it is like this, which is a little bit different. In tier 1, I do like the higher capacity. This just makes it so we don't overheat as fast. That can be kind of annoying with this particular overclock. I've tried to build this all for cold before, and it really doesn't work. I find that just a sustained fire build works a whole lot better with this one. Lets you get more reliable DPS out, and lets you do really high DPS towards big targets like Dreadnoughts. This is a really strong Dreadnought build. In tier 2, we're going with ammo. We kind of need ammo here because I don't like taking the ammo in tier 4 since that's where the damage is, and otherwise you can run through ammo with this really fast. So I would highly recommend that one. Tier 3, pick whichever one of these you would like. They're both really good. I like the faster rate of fire, but it's your choice. Tier 4, I would recommend the damage because this gets you even more damage, so you have 18 damage a tick, and then that will double once an enemy is frozen, so you're getting 36 damage a tick on this. It kills big things really, really fast. It's a very fun way to play this. And then in tier 5, Cold Radiance. Cold Radiance is probably the best one for this because it's just easier to freeze things, and that's where most of our damage is going to be coming from, or a huge chunk of our damage can come from. For secondary, I decided to opt for automatic fire with the Sabata, a very simple overclock that I'm just going to be using to spray at any sort of small enemies or enemies at distance because I do have this built for recoil reduction and accuracy, so it is still pretty decent at range. And then use Ice Storm up close against big targets, and it should shred through them pretty fast. For our fourth build, we have improved thermal efficiency. This one is a clean overclock, and it's a very nice clean overclock. It just gets you more ammo and makes it so you don't overheat your CryoCannon as much. Those are really good, and since this is a clean overclock, you can kind of build it however you'd like. This is the way I typically like running the CryoCannon. So in tier 1, I'm going with more freezing power, so you can freeze things a little bit quicker, but again, any of them in tier 1 are pretty good. Tier 2, I really like the longer reach. This gives us 15 meters of reach, which is fantastic for actually killing any sort of flying enemies or enemies that are high up on walls or on the ceiling. And if you freeze any flying enemy with the CryoCannon, it will just die outright, which is very good for things like breeders or grabbers or any of the Macterra. In tier 3, I'm going with the faster rate of fire so we can get a little bit more DPS on it. Your choice as to what you would like there, though. Both options in tier 3 are really good. Then in tier 4, I'm going with extra ammo. You don't really need this, but I like extra ammo. All of them in tier 4 are pretty good. Extra damage is good. Extra freezing is good. So take whichever one you would like. This one just gets us a lot more ammo. And then in tier 5, Cold Radiance, because it's just so useful for the crowd control. Although if you want to take Fragile with this one, Fragile can also work. Whatever your favorite secondary is will work just fine with this one. I decided to take the EPC with Persistent Plasma, and I built this more for mining. This is just so that I can have even more crowd control, some slowdown on top of that. And of course I can EPC mine, which is very useful for just getting materials in weird spots. For our fifth build, we have Tuned Cooler. This is a balanced overclock that makes it so we have more cooling than we otherwise would, so we get an additional +1, as well as increased rate of fire for the CryoCannon. However, we get lower pressure gain rates, and we also have a longer charge-up time. The longer charge-up time can be a little bit annoying with this one, but the rest of it can be pretty good. Freezing enemies a little bit faster is nice. This used to be a clean overclock once upon a time when it was kind of overpowered and it just gave you +1 cooling, which made it have like an 80% pick rate. That's been nerfed, now it's a balanced overclock, and it's a little bit more balanced than it was before. I think this one is still one of the most picked overclocks for the CryoCannon. I could be wrong about that though. This one can be built in quite a few different ways. This is the way I usually like building it. So in tier 1, I'm taking the faster spin up. This is just so that we don't have that 0.7 second spin up. I like the 0.3 that it gives us here. It's a little bit faster than what the base CryoCannon is. Tier 2, I like the longer reach so I can freeze enemies that are flying around the walls. In tier 3, I'm taking the increased rate of fire so we can have an even higher increased rate of fire, but you could go with the other option in tier 3 too. That one's pretty decent as well. In tier 4, I'm taking extra ammo, just so that we have some more ammo, but any of them in tier 4 are fine as well. And then in tier 5, once again, Cold Radiance, because it's just so dang good. And then for a secondary weapon, I decided to take Explosive Reload with the Sabata. This lets us have really high single target damage, and then we're going to be using the CryoCannon and our drills to take care of most of the other enemies. We can, of course, use this against large enemies too, freeze them with the CryoCannon, and then fire the Explosive Reload into them. And we can get a decent amount of DPS that way as well. And then for our sixth and final overclock, we have the weirdest overclock, which is Flow Rate Expansion. Flow Rate Expansion makes it so you gain more pressure, but you also drop that pressure faster. So it's kind of a weird sustained fire build, and that's usually the way that I build it, and it's always felt strange to me. It's never felt terrible. but it's always felt weird. I don't know how to really describe it. If you've tried it, then you know. But it doesn't feel the same as the CryoCannon. It's mostly just kind of changing the way that it works. Anyway, this is the way that I usually build it. However, I've tried building this a whole bunch of different ways, and all of them felt okay enough. In Tier 1, I like taking the larger mag size. That just makes it easier for sustained fire with this one, which is mostly what I'm going for, and it doesn't overheat too quick. In Tier 2, longer reach so that we can freeze flying enemies, but the ammo is really good in Tier 2 as well. In Tier 3, faster rate of fire, just so that we can get a little bit more DPS. Again, your choice. You could go with the even higher gain rate with this one, and it can freeze things very fast, but it does kind of feel strange that way, and I usually just go with the faster rate of fire. Tier 4, I'm going with extra ammo, just so that we can have more ammo, and then in Tier 5, cold radiance once again, just because it's so strong. Then for a secondary weapon, I once again am taking the EPC, and this time I'm taking Heavy Hitter with it. This is a far more straightforward overclock than our primary overclock. What this one does is it just gets you higher damage per regular shot with the EPC, and usually I build this all for fire, and I use this kind of as a thermal shock build. It does feel weird, but I think it's fitting to go along with this overclock too, and beyond that you can also just use it to light things on fire at a distance. The Heavy Hitter is actually pretty good at a distance if you want to pick off leeches and stuff. And these are all the overclocks and builds for them with the CryoCannon, done quick. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. We will be getting back into Driller soon because we still got to talk about the EPC and the microwave gun. Up next, I think we're going to be talking about Stubby, though, for the Engineer, which should be fun as well. Thank you guys so very much for watching this. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye-bye!